On today's episode, we're exploring the Oregon coast. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, Matt here for AVC and welcome back to the shop. On today's episode, I wanted to tell you about my trip to Oregon. Now this is our family's third trip to the Oregon State Parks, and we are really falling in love with all the amenities they have out there. It's a really great place to take your van, take the family, and I hope you gain a little bit of info from this video. So not all van life trips are gonna be the same, and this one is done a little bit differently than what we've done in the past. So to spare my kids the 20-hour drive from Colorado all the way to Fort Stevens, we decided to have the family fly out. And this gave me a little bit of time to explore on the way there. I could kind of go at my own pace. I could do big long days on the road if I wanted to, and I didn't have to worry about stopping every 3 hours or so for my 4-year-old to kind of get a break from the car seat. And that makes travel a little bit easier. So if you're traveling with little ones, this can be kind of a pro tip. You know, it was 20 hours drive all the way to Oregon, and my family flew into Portland. So I drove for 2 days, and then I picked them up on a Saturday, and from there to Fort Stevens, where we were gonna camp, was like an hour and a half. So it was a pretty chill day for them in the van, and they got to do the whole van camping thing without a 40-hour round trip drive to Oregon and back. So it's something cool to consider, and maybe put it in your notes when you're planning your own family's trips. So for the first portion of the trip, I was doing this all solo. So I left Loveland, Colorado, and I got as many miles under my belt as I could on that first day. I had a little bit of stuff to do here at the shop, so I got a little bit of a late start, like 10, 11 o'clock, and I ended up stopping in a town called Lava Hot Springs in Idaho. Well, we made it. We are in Lava Hot Springs, Idaho, and got a nice grassy spot here at Mary's Campground. It's like 50 bucks for the night, so not too bad. Lots of families here, which makes me sad because my kids would have loved it. And we're right next to the walking bridge, and we're gonna go check out the hot springs in town. Now, Lava Hot Springs is a really beautiful town, and as you can guess, it has some hot springs there. So I found a nice little campground. It was a short walk across the bridge and into town to go to the hot springs. The hot springs is a really nice, clean facility. It's probably one of the better hot springs I've been into. And I think they had 6 different pools, and it was a cute little town. There's a nice little river in town too that you can float. So it's a really cool pit stop, 8 hours from Colorado here, which means it's like a really good first day adventure. So we can get out of the state and then get into a new zone in that kind of southeastern Idaho spot. So then day 2 was just kind of blasting through the rest of Idaho and up into the Columbia River Gorge. My goal was to meet up with the guys from Go Code Overland, and they were coming out from Illinois, and they took the northern route across the United States. So I was on the phone with them for the second half of the trip, just kind of planning out where we were gonna go. And we ended up using this new app that they've been working on called Grover. So I know we've talked about this on the channel before, but Grover is a really cool app that makes van life a little bit easier. So it has 3 different things that it does. 1, it can troubleshoot systems in your van, which is really nice. 2, it can do kind of these AI generated trips, or you can use it to hunt out new places to camp. And that's exactly what we were using it for. So Josh and I were both on the phone and using Grover, hunting for BLM dispersed camping. And we were trying to find somewhere kind of near that Pendleton, Oregon area, or closer on the Columbia River near Pendleton, Oregon. We can search state parks, we can search BLM land, we can search land trust data, all sorts of different things, and it's all through voice. So I can use voice commands with the app even while I'm driving, and then it can read things back to me, and I can throw them right into Google Maps and drive right to a pin. So it's super convenient. If you want to try it out, there's a link in the description below, and it's free. Now, it's one of the things that AVC pays for so that you can use it for free, so check it out. So anyway, so we met up with the guys from Go Code Overland, and we ended up finding this nice little spot over the top of the river on Columbia River. It was super windy, as you can guess. Columbia River is known for its wind. And so we kind of circled the vans, had a nice little chill spot in the middle, and everybody got to hang out together. It was really nice to kind of touch base with those guys after the winter. And this was before the St. Helens AVE show. And we were on our way, all of us were on our way to the Adventure Van Expo show in St. Helens this year. So it was cool to link up with them. The next morning we got up, and then we just jammed into town, grabbed a little bit of quick breakfast, fueled up, and then had a really beautiful drive along the Columbia River. Got some cool shots as we were driving along. And then they jammed off right to the show because they were actually vendors. I personally wasn't going to the show to be AVC. I was just going there to camp and hang out and see some of my friends. So we got to the show in St. Helens. I gave a few personal tours of the van, and it was kind of rainy that day, so it wasn't super crowded, but we got to really connect with some cool people, so that was awesome. If you were there and you got to tour the van with me, thanks for taking the time and checking it out. So then that night we partied down. It was Marissas' birthday, so everybody was there celebrating. It was a really good time. And then the next morning I was feeling just tip-top shape, and we made some cool, nice breakfast burritos with the Go Code crew, and then it was off and made up with my family. Well, the AVE show is over for me, and I swung down to Portland, and look who I picked up. Hey! the family's here. We're on our way to Astoria and Fort Stevens State Park. It's like an 1.5 hour drive from Portland, so pretty easy, and it's very beautiful. Let's go. So now we got to the meat of the trip. So after the AVE show, met up with a family in Portland, picked up the family, and then we're out to Fort Stevens. So Fort Stevens is one of the Oregon State Parks. And if you're not familiar with the Oregon State Parks, they have excellent facilities. So most of them have hot running water, fresh water for all your vehicles. They have power hookups for everything. You can make reservations, and you have to make reservations because they're so popular. So it is definitely something you have to plan in advance. But once you plan it in advance, it's super nice. I've done road trips where we toured all along the coast doing one night at each spot. We thought that was a little bit too much driving, a little bit too much setting up, especially for the family with young kids. So then the next time we did 2 nights travel, 2 nights travel. And that was actually pretty nice too. And we actually had a day to chill at each park and like explore. And then this time we decided we just do one park for 4 days. So we went to Fort Stevens for 4 days, and Fort Stevens is in the very northwest corner of Oregon. So it's kind of right on the Pacific Ocean and where the Columbia River meet. It's right at that point. And Fort Stevens has a bunch of cool amenities. One of the cool things about the Fort Stevens is that it has a drivable beach. And this is really cool just because we see those iconic videos and photos of our vans out on the beach, and we have a little bit of FOMO. So it's definitely something to like put on your bucket list, get the van, get out on the sand. Another cool thing about the beach there is they have a shipwreck. So there's like a bunch of steel pieces sticking up out of the sand of a shipwreck from back in the day. And the kids love to like climb on it and look at it and stuff like that. It's a cool point for marine life to grow on. So it's a cool feature, and it's definitely not to be missed. Another cool historic thing about Fort Stevens is it has a bunch of World War II batteries and bunkers there. So these were old gun emplacements from World War II, and they're this just like brutalist cement architecture, and it's really cool to explore these with the kids, climb all over them, see everything. It's fun. We ended up having a little picnic at one of them. It was a nice little walk from the campground. Another just cool thing to check out. Another very cool thing about Fort Stevens is they have a 27-hole disc golf course, and this is not for the faint of heart. These are huge holes. So if you're into disc golf, it's really cool. I got about 4 holes done with the family, and that was all that my 4-year-old had in her. As far as like walking, they're sometimes 150, 200-yard holes. So they're for long drives. So if you are into disc golf, it is a premium course, really beautiful. It explores all of the old fort. So it's a really cool way to explore the state park, explore the fort, and play a little bit of disc golf and have fun along the way. The last thing I want to say about Fort Stevens is they have a really cool junior ranger program. So I have a 4 and a 14-year-old, and they both had a really good time running through the programs, learning about the area, learning about some natural things in the park. It's a really good way to get the kids engaged in like the natural setting and learn a little bit too. So if you're there in a state park, always check out the Ranger program. It's pretty cool, and you get a cool little keepsake badge. So this is our first really big test of the van, and I have to say it did awesome. We were super stoked on some of the new amenities that we added to this van that we didn't have in our last van. Notably, the hot water was one of the best things. So hot running water in the van makes cleanup and all those dishes and everything like that super easy. We use less water because everything rinses off so much faster. We also had the drinking water tap that made filling up water bottles and everything really nice. These are both new things for me in a van, and I don't think I could do without them now. Also, the induction cooktop was a really great addition. Having a built-in induction cooktop in the van that I don't have to set up or anything like that made making meals super easy. Now, I did bring a camp stove, but I never actually got it out and used it outside of the van. If you remember from our trip up to South Dakota, we only used the camp stove and we never cooked in the van, and this is the exact opposite. So we made all of our meals here inside the van or at the campfire, and it was super easy. We would just kind of do meals in rotation, do the kids' meal first, then my wife and I would make dinner. But even one burner, it was super easy, and it was enough for 10 days. Never even felt the need to get out the camp stove. The last thing about the van on this trip was just the awesomeness of the cloud cap that we have in here. Getting the kids upstairs and into bed was super nice. It was actually the first time I've gotten to sleep next to my wife in the van in all of our years of van life. We've always kind of traded off sleeping next to one of the kids or something like that. And now both the kids are old enough. They both wanted to sleep in the pop top, which is super cool. So they slept up in the cloud cap, and my wife and I got to sleep down here. It was really cozy, really comfortable. I think everybody had a really great time. And I think this is kind of the perfect setup for a family of 4. Since we're doing 4 days in the state park, we thought it'd be nice to break up that time by visiting some of the places around town. Now, really close to Fort Stevens is the town of Astoria. And Astoria is a little town right on the Columbia River. It's very close to that. It's actually the town of Goonies, where they filmed the original Goonies house and things like that. So a lot of people probably know it from that. But there's a couple of cool touristy things in town, the Astoria Column, the old wharf, and then just some cool little shopping, things like that around town. So it was nice to get out of the state park, visit a local space. We went to a brewery for lunch. We climbed the Astoria Column. It was incredibly beautiful. So if you're in the area, it's definitely worth at least driving up to the column. You don't necessarily have to climb it if you're, it's not in your fitness level or something like that, but getting up to that park and just getting the view was well worth the trip, and it'd be a great place to just kind of post up and have a little picnic. The next town we visited was a little town called Seaside, and that is just to the south of Fort Stevens. Now this is kind of your like classic touristy town right on the ocean, and so we did those classic touristy kind of things. We got a couple of souvenirs for the kids. The kids rode the carousel in town, which is kind of this cool classic carousel. There's some other cool carnival things in town. If you planned a day, I think you could hit some fun stuff around there. We got some seafood on the beach and just had a nice little evening. And then we like hit the store in town and resupplied. We ended up catching a cool little arts fair, which is cool too. So we got to buy like a local storybook from a local artist. And it was about like a little buoy in the ocean. Just kind of a cool, nice thing to pick up from someone local. Well, after 4 nights and 5 days at Fort Stevens, our time had come to an end. We jammed out back to Portland. We actually met up with some family there in town, had a nice little lunch, cool to touch base with them, and then dropped the family off at the airport. And then I was off and on my own. On the way home, I ended up using Grover again, and I found a cool campsite just outside of Pendleton, kind of between Pendleton and the Oregon border. It was right up in that last little set of hills. Found a cool spot to get the dog out. She ran around, got some cool pictures, had some fun. And then the next day, out into Idaho, had another like quick trip home. This time, I was on my way home. I'd been out on the road for a while, so I was just ready to get home. So I blasted across Idaho, tried out a new hot springs, which is kind of nice, but the camping there was like ridiculous. They wanted $110 to camp in a parking lot, and that sucked. So I bailed on that, and I drove up into the hills, used Grover again, found another cool campsite on the bluffs. It was Dinosaur Butte, right on the edge of Wyoming, and then had a nice little night there. Got in pretty late, did some cool star photography, got a cool pictures of the van at night, which is kind of fun. And then the next day, it's just that blast across Wyoming. If you've ever driven I-80 in Wyoming, there's nothing to see, there's nothing to do, you just get it done. So motored back, got home in time for 4th of July, had a nice little holiday with the family, and that trip was a wrap. But 10 days in the van, everything worked perfect. Super happy with everything we did in this build out, and I'm excited to give you guys a tour of the final van build. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. So we want to do something different for the trip report this time. Last time I did this like day-to-day kind of play-by-play thing. This time I thought maybe we just hit the high points, talk about the cool points of the trip. If you thought this was cool, let us know in the comments below which one you liked. We're trying to dial in this trip report format, and that'll help the channel. So with that, we'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.